back of this old front porch, standing on broken boards. Same old red truck in the drive, same town, but a different war. Mama smiles and holds me, Daddy shakes my hand, but I walk through the door feeling like a stranger in this land. They ask me how I'm doing, I say I'm doing fine. I change the subject every time the past crosses my mind. Got a heart that jumps at thunder or a slamming door, trying to learn this quiet life after living loud in a war. So talk me home, don't need the perfect words. Just sit right here and let your voice be heard. I don't need fixing, I just need a friend to listen while the pieces find their place again. I'm tired of being brave and feeling all alone, so just hold my hand and talk me home. Little brother's growing taller, but he won't meet my eyes. Got my stories locked in boxes, he's got questions locked inside. Sunday dinner at the table, laughter all around. I'm counting exits, watching shadows moving across the ground. I say, you wouldn't get it when my daddy asked me why. He just nods and passes the plate, but there's sadness in his eyes. Then mama whispers softly, son, you ain't over there. You're sitting in this kitchen and we're all right here. So talk me home, don't need the perfect words. Just sit right here and let your voice be heard. I don't need fixing, I just need a friend to listen while the pieces find their place again. I'm tired of being brave and feeling all alone, so just hold my hand and talk me home. We start with little stories about the dog, the garden and the rain. Next thing now I'm explaining where I left a part of me in pain. They don't say they understand, they don't try to make it right. They just keep on talking with me through the middle of the night. Just talk me home, don't need the perfect words. Your simple questions are the sweetest I've heard. Oh, you're not here to fix me, just to sit and stay. And somehow all this silence slowly fades away. I'm not that same soldier standing made of stone. With every word you say, you talk me home. Yeah, with every quiet question, every how you been, I start to see there's healing in just letting you in. I'm not fighting this alone, like I've always known. You don't have to understand, to talk me home.
Well, good evening, Rumble. All two of you tonight. Hey, we got another one coming in. But we normally have James's Empty Pockets podcast. I'm not exactly sure. I overslept this evening. And I'm not sure if he fell asleep or exactly what. But hold on. But we're going to go on, have a little podcast tonight. We've got a big interview coming up tomorrow. And I want to talk to you about it tonight. Maybe some of you folks can view this later. It probably won't be a very long stream, but let's see how the evening goes. In the 1950s and the 1960s, the Cold War was at its height. And an enrichment uranium plant was put in a little town in Ohio here called Piketon. This reeks of cover-up. It reeks of lies. It reeks of kicking the can down the road and a bunch of bureaucratic assholes that are keeping a community under the radar. We know they're afraid that if this was to get out in among and take a root against the public, that it would cause problems. But we're gonna talk to these folks too that are heading up. Vina Colley and Paul Mobley will be with us on the Empty Pockets podcast at 2 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, at 5 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be interviewing them on James's podcast. But if you haven't seen or listened to this, I'm going to play a few little videos while we're just kicking around here. And I'm going to give you a little background on the Piketon issue. This will kind of get you brought up to date, and then after the video we'll talk just a little bit, okay? So let's try this. This.
This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and we've been covering the struggle of workers and community people in Piketown and Portsmouth, Ohio, to protect their health and safety and to investigate what is going on with the contamination of a highly toxic nuclear processing plant that has been there for decades. And we now are learning that the U.S. government and big corporations have plans to put more nuclear material and processing plants and small nuclear power plants in this area. So joining us are Vina Colley, and she is with the Portsmouth Piketon Residents for Environmental Safety and Security Press, and was a longtime whistleblower at the Piketon plant when she was in the OCAW, and also Paul Mobley, who is a researcher, has been doing research on the effect of the contaminants on the community. So welcome, both of you, to our show. Vina, maybe you can go over the new developments that have taken place, because all over the United States, people are talking about these data centers that are being built, and also the plan of the U.S. government to bring in small nuclear power plants that are supposedly safe into communities all over the United States.
Well, Trump and Japan and some billionaires have decided that they want to put the largest gas power plant at Piketon, modular reactors at Piketon, and a data center at Piketon. And they're already in production with the high-assay, low-enriched uranium, which could fuel the small modular reactors. Piketon was one of the largest facilities in the world. And the one thing they're not addressing is the contamination and the cancer. We have the highest, according to Joe Mangano, an epidemiologist, we have the highest cancer of any facility that he's ever studied at Piketon. Our childhood cancer is 107% above the national average. And right now, what's going on at Piketon is behind closed doors, they're calculating the doses of what we can get and the doses that the community and the workers can have. And none of that is right. So that I'm hoping Paul will mention that. And they spent out $9 million for cleanup, and they're spending out $9 billion to continue to pollute the community and the workers. And so we're just kind of devastated. We're just kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And everyone's listening because it's jobs. They hear jobs. 2,400 workers to 4,000 workers will be here building all this stuff. And when it's all said and done, we'll be lucky to have 200 workers. So it's always about the job. It's not about doing the right thing. And it's not about, like Piketon is sitting over top of the largest aquifer in the Midwest. And we have 12 waste cells where they're decommissioning the buildings and putting everything in these waste cells.
And I visited Piketon and saw the creeks surrounding that plant. They're unmarked. People don't know that there are contaminants in these creeks. And there's a trailer camp close to one of the creeks where kids are going into these creeks unprotected, no information, no oversight, no supervision. It seems like the U.S. government and the politicians are allowing people to be contaminated and poisoned without regard to their health and safety, even though they know that it's very dangerous toxins in the area.
In 1992, I was at the EPA office in Logan, and I found out that Little Beaver Creek was contaminated. Press is the first ones who brought up the contamination in Little Beaver Creek. We have asked them to put signs in this creek, and they refuse to do that. And Little Beaver Creek, it empties out into the Scioto River, and the Scioto River empties out into the Ohio River, and the Ohio River goes all the way to the Mississippi. So we are contaminating people from the plant all the way to the Mississippi. And the largest aquifer that's in the Midwest, if it's contaminated, and it's going to take a lot of water for these new projects they want, the data center, the small modular reactors. It's going to take a lot of water. And if they contaminate the aquifer, which is probably already pretty much, I think, contaminated, it's going to go all the way up to Indiana. I mean, this is a lot of water that's going to be contaminating a lot of communities, and they're not even going to be aware of it because they don't want to talk about Piketon. It's covered up. And I think Paul can tell you how many gigabytes and all this that these facilities is going to take to run. And it's going to take all kind of water. And of course, if they're going to pump water, once they start pumping water, the bedrock is fractured at Piketon. How much more damage is it going to do to the drinking water?
So you're talking about potentially contaminating millions of people.
Millions of people.
With these facilities, and people are still sick, still dying, and getting cancer in Piketon, and apparently that's okay with the politicians and the corporations that want to invest in the government. Paul?
Well, they've even talked about buying the community out, taking $4 million to buy out the community. But what are they going to do about the other communities 25 miles away? Because Dr. Ketter and I have taken tests, and we know for a fact right now that it's 15 miles contaminated from the plant. And so we're still doing testing and trying to go further and further away from the plant to see how bad it is. And I'm not talking about just the south side. I'm talking about the east, west, north, south. I mean, it goes around the plant. It doesn't go in just one direction. And so we've been putting uranium hexafluorides into the air for 70 years from the plant, plus all the other technetium and the plutonium and the neptunium that's going into the creeks. But I wonder about high assay low enriched uranium. It's been in production since 23. And what it can do, it can fuel these small modular reactors. So we have a lot going on here. And they're behind closed doors right now, setting the limits on how much we can get exposed to. And their limits is all, which Paul can talk about, the risk assessment. The limits aren't good, and they're wanting to up them now so we could get more exposure just so they can do their production.
So, Paul, you've been investigating this about increasing the limits of exposure. What would this mean to the people of Pikeston and Portsmouth?
I have, as Science Secretary of the International Committee on Radiation Risk, we have really dug deep into this, and so much so that we're not only finding the flaws of the current system, we are now developing a new system to be used globally. What we found is that the current model is underestimating the dose. And it's underestimating it by orders of magnitude, not just by a little. Our sister organization called the ECRR in Europe, they're developing their own risk model based on the epidemiology. Our model is based on the physics of it, right? And both of our models are saying the same thing about the current ICRP model that's used globally. It is underestimating the risk. And if they increase the amounts that are allowed, it's only going to cause the excess deaths. This is a very important phrase. Excess deaths is going to climb in future studies. And these are deaths that they cannot explain by their model. Now that becomes a data point. You have all these studies through the years that have their estimate in the real world cancers that we're seeing. And in between, there's this gap where you can make a ratio up and get down to one number. And our model is fitting that one number better than the ICRP's model, right? So in Piketon, you've had years and years and years of releases. And this isn't just a uranium enrichment plant. VINA has documentation that proves from the US Senate that pre-1985, they were sending undiluted plutonium to Piketon for handling. So we know not only just trace amounts of the stuff was going to Piketon, undiluted forms of it was being sent to Piketon. Now, the problem is that most of the companies, most of the DOE, most of these agencies, they simply don't know this issue. They are going off a book of thresholds that was written long ago. And they've never investigated how this is all formulated. They just started with what they thought was set in stone. So it's not necessarily all these people have this, negative thing that they're trying to, cause exposures to people because they want their business to go. There's a lot of them that simply just do not know any different. And that's honest, right? So the problem is that we need to fix their thought process on how this stuff is done. And the problem is it's a simple denominator issue. It's a mass denominator issue. What they've done is they've averaged energy over an entire kilogram of mass for internal exposures. But when you're talking about alpha particles, alpha emitters, you can't dilute that energy over an entire kilogram because it only stays within 80 microns. A very, very small, tiny. So if you take that energy and then dilute it over the entire organ, it's next to nothing. It's negligible. But when you actually break down the physics and you actually add the actual mass that is getting the interaction from the radioactivity, then the picture unfolds. Then all these cancers start to make sense then.
And Vina, you have been a worker at the plant. You were contaminated and received compensation for your cancer. How many workers at the plants have received compensation? You say that this is a struggle for your health and safety. And a lot of these people, if they don't work at the plant, are not even getting compensated necessarily for being contaminated. Paul, you going to
I
say
could
something?
fit that through the EEOICPA, which is something that Vina and press worked on getting for the workers. $25 billion has been spent to date for their compensation. For how many different cancers, Vina?
22.
And beryllium disease and neuropathy and all sorts of things.
So there's been an epidemic of cancers as a result of the processing of radioactive material at the Piketon plant. And it's not only contaminated the workers, but the people in the community. You're saying for 25 miles around Vina, people have been contaminated. And what kind of compensation have they got?
They haven't gotten any. And matter of fact, Piketon was turned down for RECA, even though Oak Ridge and Paducah was added in. And Piketon was an SEC site under this Energy Employees Compensation Act, which meant these workers weren't supposed to prove anything because they done away with our badges. We had nothing in our badges, and they put the badges in a chipper, so they couldn't prove their exposures here. So they become a special exposure cohort. The whole site was a special exposure cohort where Oak Ridge and Paducah had just certain buildings that you went into was added as a special exposure cohort. So Piketon, the whole plant was an SEC site. And so to me, that admits that they know we have a problem. I had all these commissioners and I had all these governors, council of governors. They all signed for us to get RECA, but we were left out of RECA. They tried to leave us out of the compensation bill, but due to our plutonium records, we had proof that we had plutonium at Piketon. They had to put us in the compensation bill for the workers. But they tried to leave us out. And I had to go to Senator Strickland and DeWine and all of them. And this is what gets me. DeWine knows that the workers here were all dying of cancer. And here he is pushing all these nuclear jobs back on this community that is dying from cancer.
And of course, the Medicaid cutbacks. We don't have national health care. And what do people do who get sick in the community from these radioactive materials? What situation are they in?
Well, like I told the RECA victims, they only wanted to go to 2-mile radius, which is nothing. And I said, once they're going to compensate these people, they're going to give them $50,000 or $100,000, no medical insurance. And then when they cut off your Medicare and your Medicaid, they're not going to pay for the cancers that they're paying for now. So the people are getting screwed.
So that's a death sentence.
That's a death sentence.
So they're going to kill literally thousands of people in Piketon and Portsmouth.
But not only them, their children. It gets passed on in their genetics. This is why around this area, it has gone from the lowest in all of Ohio to the highest cancer occurrence and cancer death rate in the entire state, and amongst the highest in the nation.
And what has Governor DeWine said about it? Or even Vance, he came from Ohio. What do they say?
They're all wanting these nuclear jobs. They're not saying anything. They don't answer us back. Trump's never been here. He's pushing these jobs for the area, and these guys don't even live around here. DeWine and his bunch up in Columbus, they have the nuclear board up there, and they're making decisions for all of us. They have somebody on the community that speaks for the community, but they have nobody from the actual community. They had a big rally out here for Trump and Japan and the billionaires. They had a big rally the other day, even had a band out there, but they had no community people. They had the officials who want jobs so they can get a pat on their back. And like the shoemaker who was giving all the speeches, he lives in Chillicothe. He lives 25, 30 miles north of that plant. He doesn't even live here, but he thinks that's good for us. But they didn't come and ask us. They're making all these decisions behind closed doors. And what's going to happen when we get the dose and when we get permits to do this and to do that and to shut out the public, this is going to happen to all the other sites. Whatever happens here at Piketon is going to happen at the other sites. And there's no community input whatsoever. We're the only 40-year environmental group, and we've never been. They hold the meetings on plant side where they can let the workers. And then they had a ban this time. And then all these politicians come in and told what a good thing this is going to happen. We're going to do all this in a small community. You're going to have so many 4,000 jobs or more. And then when they're done, there might be 200 or 300 jobs.
And you're saying that this is spreading out throughout the country, all the data centers that are being built, which have to be powered, and they're using module reactors, which have contaminants in them, waste. What is going to happen to that waste? Do they explain to people what's going to go on the area with the waste of these module reactors?
It'll be the same way. It'll be the same thing. It's the same waste. It'll just be smaller scales, you know. The problem is that the scientists have manipulated the politicians, and they've done it with a single word: hormesis. A simple word, hormesis. And basically, it's your DNA, it's your immune system, your cells that repair themselves, right? It's a hormesis range where your body actually is beneficial for you to get more radiation, right? But the problem is that this is easily explained by two words: biphasic cell. That's how your system is responding to radiation. First, it gets impacted, right? Then a negative health impact happens, and then your immune system rushes in and tries to repair it, right? So you see that in the dose. It goes up and then it comes down just a little bit, then it goes up again. That's your hormesis they're talking about. But it's simply your body's natural immune system going in there to fight off what already negatively happened to you. There's no way that they can keep a hormesis range to occur in the environment for everyone. It's impossible.
And it seems like the communities around the country, the contaminated communities where they now want to bring in these data centers and module reactors, need to come together. It seems like it's an epidemic of these plans of these billionaires, these techno-fascists. They want to deregulate, no regulation. That is part of Project 2025. Destroy any kind of regulatory agencies, cut the budget for OSHA, Cal OSHA, Ohio. What is OSHA and Ohio doing about these injuries and illnesses on the job?
You got to realize that we're Department of Defense and Department of Energy. They are the fox guarding the hens. There's no OSHA. There's no NIOSH. They even train their own people, so everyone thinks that they have NIOSH and OSHA on site. And a lot of these workers aren't going to speak up because they're going to lose their job if they find anything wrong at the plant. But they act like they have NIOSH and OSHA and the NRC. The NRC has no jurisdiction over this plant in Piketon. Nothing to do with the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy. They have no jurisdiction. And everybody thinks, oh, they're the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and they're taking care of making sure you don't get exposed, but they have no say-so. The EPA has no say-so. Only time they have say-so is when it goes off-site, and they're not even posting the signs in the creeks that there's off-site contamination, even though I found the records at their EPA office. I found records that a lady named Dorothy Dunham, she had technetium-99 in her well, her cistern, and they would not even tell them. They never heard of it until I came there with the papers showing that their well was contaminated. So this is what this company does. It doesn't talk to the community. It shuts them out. They have a site-specific advisory board who has a meeting every once a month or every 3 months. they're not allowed to answer our questions. So there's no input here. The community has no input. You can go tell them what you think, and we can record it, but they're not going to answer any of us. And we're never invited on site. And we're not invited right now where they're behind closed door making all the decisions on how much we're allowed to be exposed.
So,
and how
Paul,
much can go in our creeks.
So, Paul, what is going to be the cost to people of Pikes and Plymouth, and also putting this contaminated water into the aquifer?
Right now, there's two. There's the main aquifer underneath the site, and then there's two other aquifers above that. The shallowest one is completely contaminated. It has enriched uranium in it. It has plutonium, neptunium, a lot of technetium-99 because it's water soluble, right? That's in the aquifer right now. It's in the aquifer right now. It's also there's some in the middle aquifer as well, and it's going to eventually make its way into the Taze aquifer, which is the largest in the Midwest, that runs all the way up to Indiana. She is right. So there's a lot to this that people don't understand, is that the true cost is going to be people's lives. In the end, it's going to be people's lives, and those lives won't be attributed to the actual source, the cause. The effects won't be attributed to the cause, and that's a problem, and we're trying to fix it. We're going to fix it.
I want to thank both of you. We've been talking with Vina Cawley. She is a injured worker at the processing plant in Piketon. She's also president of Portsmouth Piketon Residents for Environmental Safety and Security Press, and also Paul Mobley, and he is with
the International Committee on Radiation Risk. You can find us at icrrisk.org. That's icrrisk.org.
Well, I want to thank both of you. It's important that the people of the United States, the people of the world, really understand what's going on, because their lives are in jeopardy.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching that. So if you're not doing anything, by the time I make that, it'll be today. Hello. Just a second. This interview here. Let me forward this. All right, now we did interview these folks today. Actually, Carl did. I was his sidekick. And it was an excellent interview, and it's worthy of being played here again on my lovely channel. So let me see if I can bring it up again. As you all know, I'm a rookie. Here we go.
All right, folks, welcome. We have a special show for you today. We have two special guests, and I'm going to bring them on right now. We have Vina, Larry, and Paul. All right. Vina, I want you to introduce yourself and give the audience a little bit of your background.
Okay, my name is Vina Cawley, and I'm a former worker at the Portsmouth Gas Diffusion Plant in Piketon, Ohio. I started there in 1980. I started as a healthy worker, and then they had me to do some extra testing to make sure I was that healthy. And so I got hired in 1980 as a second-class electrician. And this was a new program that they started, and it put me in every building on site and a lot of buildings off site. The Portsmouth Gas Diffusion Plant is the largest plant in the world. It had two of the largest facilities in the world, the X326, and I think it's the 330 building. And these two buildings, one, the 26 has been demolished, and now they're working on the 330 building. When I went to work there, I thought it was the safest place that I ever worked because they wanted you to wear hard hats and safety glasses. And we were, as an electrician, we were cleaning down electrical equipment that had this oil on it with trichloroethylene. And the only thing, they never told us what we were working with, so we weren't suited up. And so we were in confined spaces cleaning down transformers that had PCB oil leakage, which is polychlorinated thinolents. After 1986, I found out that oil was radioactive oil. So we were cleaning radioactive oil with trichloroethylene, and I asked, what do we do with this? And they said, dump it down the drains. Well, I later found out that those drains went to Little Beaver Creek, to the Cider River, to the High River. So we were dumping radioactive material down these drains. And in 1983, I filed a grievance because I felt like there was more than 30 workers were being exposed to radiation, even though I wasn't quite sure how.
So, Vina, let me just ask you a quick question. Now, when they told you to pour this down the drain, the people that told you that, do you think they knew that that was radioactive material?
The workers that I worked with, we didn't know, but I'm sure someone in upper supervision knew that that plant and these process buildings were all radioactive. At one time, they had a sign on the door. When you entered the door, it said, this building is radioactive. And then they took the signs down, and I'd say, well, where's these areas at? And they would say, well, wherever you see the yellow tape at, it was roped off. And so you can't see radiation, so you don't know. But for some reason, my body, I was breaking out in rashes, and my hair was falling out, and I was just getting really sick. And in 83, I left the plant side, not really knowing it was my job. And then I went back to work as soon as I got better, because I've always worked. Since I'm 11, 12 years old, I've worked. And so I really didn't know it was making me sick. So then my doctor started asking me, what are you working in? And I said, well, we're using trichloroethylene and cleaning down this oil. And that's when he started running some special tests on me. And I did okay until about 1985. And my boss were told to keep an eye on me. So they put me in a building called the Roundhouse. It was like the 300 building. And I was working up in the cable trays because I was working with a guy named Howard Lyons, and he had a heart attack. So I told him, I said, oh, Howard, I said, I'll get up there and clean that. And while I was up there in the trays, I could see this kind of a misty stuff and this oil in these trays. And I said, Howard, how did this oil get in the trays? He said, well, probably the electricians may have spilled it out of their pocket or whatever. So I called Health Physics, and they came over, and that's when they checked me again and told me I was better than their machines. So they pulled me off that job. They still didn't tell me it was radioactive. And the guy that I was working with, Howard, he eventually died of a heart attack. And so they put me outside, taking these electrical equipment, which were big ceramic tiles. And I could see all these small gray particles flying everywhere in the sky. And so I hurried up and put a mask over my face. And then my boss came and got me when I finished the job. I called him, and he was on an electrical cart. He then took me over to the X300 building. This is the building they're demolishing now. And we got up on the top floor, started to the front of the building. And as soon as we got about halfway through there, here come this gray cloud after us. And I said, what is that? And he turned around as fast as he could. And he said, well, our job's done. That was nothing, just something, I don't know what it was. He said that he knew it was a radiation leak. And it was big gray, like a big cloud coming after us. And so I went home. I got really sick. And so I had to go over and see a guy, an occupational health and safety doctor named Dr. White. And when he took a biopsy of my lungs and he found small gray particles in my lungs, and he said that I looked just like another worker that he had just saw. And I sent him to an occupational health and safety doctor down in Cincinnati. So when I went to Cincinnati, it was probably about a week or two later, they found industrial fluorides, 2.12 in my urinalysis. And he told me that I had been exposed to fluorides. Plus, I had these small gray particles in my lungs. The one thing that the company did when they hired these women, they gave us these tests through an in vivo. And I always describe it as a tanning bed, but it's more than a tanning bed. They bring this thing down on top of you, and they measure your neck, and they gather your weight, and they put you in this machine, and you stay there and listen to the music. But what I found out, they were measuring me for neptunium, uranium, cesium-137, and I can't remember what else. But they knew then, in '85, that I was picking up the isotopes from the plant, and they never told me. So when I started complaining, I started seeing these supervisors tear all these papers down and throw them in the garbage can. So I went back and I gathered up those papers, and it was talking about that oil, saying that it was PCB oil. And they were supposed to have some safety meetings for the employees to let them know it was polychlorinated biphenylates. And so then they had to take a bunch of blood tests of me and probably 25 or 30 workers, which I have their names. And most of these workers tested high for the PCB oil. So I got sick in '85, and I never came back to the plant. So I was just so sick. And then the Department of Energy or the Department of Defense, I'm not sure, came to my house, and they talked to me for 4 or 5 hours. And they kept asking me the same questions mostly about that oil. Well, I read a article in the newspaper in 1989 where the community residents filed a lawsuit over this oil and the trichloroethylene. So I went to their meeting, and I started telling them I was interested in it because this is what I got sick in. And I said, I read a congressional hearing of 1985 where Senator Glenn was asking contractors, is this oil just regular oil, or does it have a radioactive characteristic? And the contractor said, oh, no, it's just oil. Well, I found out it was radioactive oil. And so this group asked me to be their leader. So that's how I got involved with PRESS, Portsmouth Pikes and Residents for Environmental Safety and Security. And then...
can you back up from your camera? All we can see is your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bring it down a little bit. We can't even see your face.
I mean, you have beautiful eyeballs.
Yeah,
we want to see
beautiful
your whole,
eyeballs.
We want to see your whole beautiful face. So, Paul, why Vina's doing that?
There
How
we
do
go.
you mix?
That's
How do
better.
you mix into this equation?
is that better?
That's
Yeah,
perfect.
it's much better. Well, I traveled down to Vina and tried to help her understand some of the documents that she had and the information and stuff. So, we spent about 3 months together and working every day on that. From the time we woke up to the time we went to bed, huh, Vina?
Yes.
That's
I
amazing.
have a whole garage full of documents. And when I moved up on the hill here, I had to take a lot of them to the dump, a lot of old newspaper clippings, because I just didn't have room for them. But in my research, I found out that the plant knew that the workers were dying since 1957. And I have a document on that. And there was 5 of them that were in 5 different hospitals. And the only thing they had in common, they said, was they all worked at Goodyear and they were dying of cancer.
Now, Goodyear's the contractor that was at the site.
Okay. So
yeah, Goodyear was there from 1980 till 1985.
Can I take you back to, you said this gray cloud was coming at you guys. Was that inside of a building?
Yes, it was inside the X300 building, the process buildings.
And how do they contain that? How do they contain it from not getting out into the environment?
They don't. And they used to have just little small, if they have just like a little puff, I've heard workers say they stuck pencils in it. But when they have a big radioactive release, they don't sound their alarms for the community. At no time have they ever sounded alarm for the community so they can evacuate. Even when they had dropped a cylinder in 1978, it was 24,000 pounds of uranium hexafluoride that they lost to the air and to the water. And they never told anybody in the community that this happened, but there was 60 some workers on it. And Mike Tolla was one of the workers, and he was sick, and he actually won a lawsuit against them. And then my friend Owen Thompson, who came out with me, he died at age 42 of brain cancer. And so a lot of the other workers got sick. They also had a building called the X705 building, the E area. And one day when I was vocal, I got a call from Salisbury, and he said, I have to tell you this, he said, because I don't know who else to tell. And I think that this is something that people should know. The workers in my area, we worked in pure plutonium, and we were so sick that they sent us to Oak Ridge and tried to get our body counts down. Somewhere in my documents, I do have all their body count exposures, but most of them died of colon cancer that worked there. I know at least 3 of them in that building died of colon cancer. So I started gathering workers' names, community residents' names. For the last 30, 40 years, I've been gathering cancer victims from the Piketon and Scioto County community.
So what are some of the health effects that you've had yourself from your exposure?
Yeah, myself, it started off with chronic bronchitis, which was actually beryllium disease. And these are things under the Energy Employees Compensation Act, the EEOICPA, are paying me for the chronic beryllium disease, chronic bronchitis. I have neuropathy, which is a neurological problem. I have congested heart failure. And remember, I had none of these problems whatsoever. I was healthy. And I think because I have such healthy genes that it's keeping me alive now and keeping me fighting them to help the victims here in this community. But I have neuropathy so bad, and it's messing with my spinal and my nerve condition. And to give an example, I bought a 3-wheeler last year because I've been riding bikes since I was 11. My brain would not let me get my leg over that seat to sit in that seat on that bike. So now I've got to sell it because I can't ride it. But I'm still here, and I still help as many people as I can. I get calls constantly helping workers to work through this Energy Employees Compensation Act. And the only reason they got it is because we had the plutonium records. They wasn't going to put us on there. And because we had the plutonium records, they put the compensation bill starting from the time they started the plant up in 1954 until 1992 is the cutoff. And for the SEC site, which is a spatial exposure Carhart, you don't have to prove anything, but they're still making the workers prove it. but you're not supposed to have to prove anything as long as you have one of these 22 cancers. And so the reason the 92 cutoff is because they took our badges. I heard there was nothing in the badges, but they put them in a wood chipper and they cut them all up. And so there's no way we can tell you how much our dose was, plus the classified records that Paul will get into later. And so from 92 to now, you have to go through this dose reconstruction with NIOS, and they're going to turn you down. They're not going to. I have a guy his mother died there. She was dosed 3 times. The first time they gave her 30-some%, and this one time they gave her like 19%, and she's been dead since the 50s. So it's a horrible story. They use these people as human experiments. We're just guinea pigs. They don't care about us. We have to get these documents unclassified, 5,000 of them, and then they're going to have to go back and do all these studies because the studies are inconclusive by design.
Paul, let's get into those documents, those classified documents. Tell us a little bit about what you think is in them and what they're gonna, what it's gonna expose, because this is one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard in my life. They don't care about the workers. They don't care about the community. And it's just reckless, unnecessary harm that you're doing to people. And it's obviously still continuing to linger because they shut down that school. Kids were exposed to it, families. But go ahead, get into those records.
Sure. So what BINA was hand delivered was a 1999 U.S. Senate document from the Mike DeWine senator and Voinovich. They were writing to the then Secretary of Energy, and in this letter, BINA underlined it perfectly. It says, quote, undiluted plutonium. Now, undiluted means something very specific in chemistry. And this basically means pure plutonium, right? There's nothing mixed in with it. It's pure plutonium. So the senators wrote in this letter that they were very concerned at not just plutonium being there, but the type of plutonium that was being handled there. So in the following year, in 2000, there was a 106th Congress. There was a congressional hearing on all this where all these workers brought in documents and information. And what they found was that there's over 5,000 documents that is still classified to this day that is found in that hearing. On page 13, I think it is, on that hearing. And I can give you the link and you can share that with your listeners. But in that hearing, they outline that there's over 5,000 documents outlining these early shipments of undiluted plutonium. And what we found out was these shipments would come in under military convoy. The actual truck carrying it would have this thing called bird cages, they called them. And what that was to keep each mass would have to be separated from each other so it wouldn't have an instant criticality. You get enough of this stuff together, it goes off by itself. You don't need to do anything. So with these shipments, they had to make sure all these were separated so they wouldn't have that issue. So then it would be brought into the site, and under classified operations, they would bring it into the X700 series buildings, not the main cascades that they were doing. The much smaller X700 series buildings where it's the finishing lines, basically. This is where they concentrated all the pure transuranics into one thing to then ship it out to have it metallurgical process to form it in the shape and size that they needed, right? So basically, Portsmouth ran as a double site. It was a nuclear weapons manufacturing plant being hidden under the guise of it being just a simple commercial nuclear reactor fuel enrichment plant. Now there's a problem here because the feedstock that they were using at the regular portion of this plant, it was contaminated because they used decades and decades of recycled uranium that came from nuclear reactors. And they used this feed product that was contaminated with plutonium, neptunium, technetium-99, which is water soluble. It's very mobile in the environment, and that is one of the main radiological contaminants in the soil today. What we do know is that if this material and these operations were indeed classified and are still to this day, then that simply means that there has not been a correct Department of Energy study ever conducted on the site. There has never been a proper dose estimate provided to any worker. They can't start with classified information to calculate the dose. So the doses are wrong. They're null and void. They have to be by the physics of it itself. You can't just pretend a starting point that isn't right and then say, here's your dose. It doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah. So to get these declassified, right? You guys, I'm assuming, already had written a letter to, I would assume,
yes.
President
Yes,
Trump.
we've actually sent out 6 petitions, official petitions to 6 different entities. We have to understand that Ohio Department of Health has jurisdiction off-site. So we have petitioned them. We have given them 60 days to return a response. In direct progress of getting these unclassified, because we hear about these files that are in the news now. Well, only the representatives can walk inside a building, hand over their phone and all their digital stuff, and then just walk in a room and simply read what's there. They can't take pictures. They can't, there's no link to it. There's no FOIA request you can do for these documents. These are off network.
So they're classified basically because, like you said, it was doubling as a military nuclear weapons program.
Yes.
So go into how this ended up not only making the workers sick, but the community sick. It's because they were dumping this oil into the drain system that was.
Well, there's a lot of different pathways here, tons of pathways. Okay, now the main portion of the plant, they have what's called cascades, and in between these cascades, basically the holes are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as you go through this cascade, and it basically concentrates specifically uranium-235 to a higher concentration level specifically, and all they're doing is basically using the very small differences in weights of the difference between U-235 and U-238. They're using that difference to run it through the cascade, and the heavier stuff falls down below and the lighter stuff stays up high. And that's how they collect it and increase the concentrations. Well, in between all these cascades, you had plates. These are classified seals. The way they made them is classified. The knowledge of them isn't classified, but the way they made them is. So these seals, that's the problem. There was thousands upon thousands of these seals that were leaking. They couldn't make them fast enough. They were just allowing certain seals to go off and leak. And they simply could not make them fast enough on site because it was a classified thing surrounding these seals, just the seals themselves, right? So then you had decades of them running the cascades, and then it was so gummed up, right, Vina? Gummed up the works is what they said. What happened was there's a lot of contamination, a lot of transuranics and stuff that wasn't designed to be put through a cascade ever. This is something they should have never attempted. So it would leak out of these cascades during operation. That was the cloud of dust that Vina was being subjected to. That was the leaking happening from in between the plates and everywhere along the cascade that had a problem. So then you have not only, air effluents, you also have liquid effluents. The entire process, it rides on the fact that they're using chemical liquids to work with this stuff, because that's the way you have to do it. You have to have an acidic liquid to change the redox conditions, change its properties, right? You have to fluorinate it. You have to make it into a UF6 gas, uranium hexafluoride gas. They heat it up and it turns into a gas, right? And it just makes it easier to work with. So the liquid effluents were going off into these various holding ponds, right? They would get done with the process, and then all the liquid waste would go into a holding pond. And one specifically is called X701B, which is just outside the X700 series buildings. This drainage pond, they would scoop it out once or twice a year, and basically it was just letting all the metals in the liquid settle to the bottom, right? Well, this holding pond would leak, and there's two creeks that come in from offsite and then exit offsite. So there's two creeks that run through the property. One of them is Little Beaver Creek. The X701 leaked into the creek, and this is where I think Vina found one of the first knowledge of knowing there was contamination out in the public. Was it the EPA that you found that document, Vina?
EPA office, and it was dated 1992.
Right. So for a very long time, they've known this stuff was leaking through the drainage ditch and into Little Beaver Creek that flows directly off site. And this is the area that I tested. Vina drove me there. We tested some of the soil. This is the area where Michael Ketter did a test. He didn't just test the school. He did another study of what's called the Little Beaver Creek, Big Beaver Creek confluence area. This is where they meet up, and then Big Beaver Creek runs into Scioto River, right? So he did the confluence area right there where those meet. He tested the vegetation. He tested the soil. He tested all sorts of things there. They found higher ratios of neptunium there, plutonium, technetium-99, uranium, enriched uranium, and it's there. The problem is that when you go to provide this radioactivity amounts, you have to infer it into a dose of something. So it's been really difficult for Michael to get the understanding of the ratios that he's finding above what should be naturally there, but trying to get people to understand the doses of those types of exposures, internal exposures. When you're talking about plutonium, just the alpha emission alone of uranium versus plutonium is 3 times the amount of uranium. And that's why it's such a higher radiocarcinogenic radioactive element than just uranium alone. It's got a much more bite to it.
Paul, can I ask you a question real quick?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
And I may be getting ahead of it a little bit, so if you need to stop me, stop me. I seen a video last night talking about rockets that would be
midnight rockets.
Midnight.
I think Vina could probably explain that pretty well.
Okay. I'd like to know about those, and also, so far after the fact, we don't know and will never know probably how much was actually released into the atmosphere.
We don't know.
100%.
We don't know. And this needs to be known. The first 10 years this plant operated, it did not have any type of commercial grade type of filters for the exhaust that were coming off of the site. They only added those in the 70s. Those were sodium and fluoride magnesium traps.
Right.
Those are the chemical traps that actually lock the stuff in. But yeah, if you want to tell them about the midnight rockets,
Please do.
Well, first of all, they had an investigating team that came to Piketon. They were there for quite a while, and they gave me a call and asked me to come out and bring some of my documents because they would like to see them. And it's called the Investigating Team Volume 1, Volume 2. And so when I took my records out there, everything in these 2 volumes was records that I gave them they said to me, the exact word is, "Where in the did you get these records? We've been looking for them for months." And he said, "Please, will you stay here so we can make copies?" And I said, "Yes." So in those records was about the midnight rockets. It's where they purge the system at night, and they have to make everything come out through the air, because if they didn't, they couldn't operate it. So they use a lot of fluorides, and that's how they got the midnight rockets. And that's how they were every night. Sometimes I'd come in the morning in the buildings, the smell would knock you down. I always thought it was Chillicothe, but I guess it's where they was purging the system so they could keep it running.
See the stuff that wasn't designed to go through the system, it would plate out on the inside of it, so it would build up.
Yeah.
And they would have to like go in there and scrape it down and all that stuff. Well, then all that stuff's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
They're going to blow it out, right?
I thought it was pretty ironic that the workers made a statement that they had a kind of a little limerick there, said, "If you can't do it right, do it at night."
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's one of the workers that said that. Matter of fact, that worker just passed away with, I think, kidney disease.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that would lead me into my last question here for you at the moment is, have there been any studies or been anything that has measured what effect this is going to have on future generations? I'm part of the Camp Lejeune. I drank that poison water for 18 years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this one touches my heart. So go ahead.
Well, a long time ago, before anyone got involved, we did a cancer and heart study, and we had, you could see the spike from the time the plant started up into the 90s. And what happened was people that had cancer here would go to Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland. So our cancers weren't being counted in our county. And so they had a petition up where we signed to do our zip codes. So no matter where we go now, it kicks us out to our zip codes. And that's why we're seeing such a big high spike in the cancer. And Joe Mangano came in here and he said he could not believe this. He's done a lot of facilities in his lifetime, that this is the worst he's ever seen. We have the highest rate of cancer in the state of Ohio. We're the highest in the nation, and our children are 107% higher than the national average for childhood cancer.
Wow.
That school they shut down has at least 5 or 6 kids over there that had leukemia that died. And do you know they put that school up for auction, and a preacher on Plantside bought that school for $250,000, a contaminated school. He bought it, and he works at the plant. Yeah. And so we protested.
They're going to try to turn it into a STEM school now.
Yeah.
What?
They just don't care. You can't see it.
You know, I was just reading, and they said that the Department of Energy said that the uranium levels were below a health risk, right? So I guess they've been saying that for years, right? They've been saying that for years. But then, on the other hand, an independent testing shows a completely different picture that is very high. So,
Carl, this has been one of those things. They have absolutely just kicked the can down the road, tell you that your eyes and your body are lying to you. All right. And the effect that it's going to have on these citizens for the rest of their life and probably the rest of their children's life.
Paul, let me ask you this. How do you clean something like this up? You really can't, can you? Once it's in, I mean, anybody that's fishing in that creek, I don't know if there's fish in it, but I would assume if you're fishing in that creek and you're eating it, you're exposing yourself to high levels of uranium. So how do you clean something like this up?
So for the last 20 years, over 20 years now. They've been basically, they're just pumping and treating. They're pumping up the water from a wells all across the area and trying to run it through a processing treatment system. I actually have had tons of documents to show, but we can't share them here. But I tracked down the actual amounts. There's 4 different water treatment systems on there. And I can't remember, but I think they've only pulled, they're mainly focused on the trichloroethylene. And they've pulled out, I don't know, maybe 440 some odd gallons of TCE. And they have pumped tens of millions of gallons of water over that time frame. So they've really removed very, very little from the contamination under the
Well,
site.
it's also got to be in the soil too, because if they're doing the what was it, Operation Black Rocket or Midnight Rocket, where they're blasting it out, all those particles are going to come down, settle on.
Well, yes, absolutely. Think though in terms like adding that, but adding also the liquid ponds, the liquid holding ponds that had no liner in them. There's no liner. It's just straight into the ground, right? So you got 2 shallow aquifers under the site. The shallowest one is called the Berea, and this one is heavily contaminated. It has everything in it. TCE, uranium, plutonium, you name it, it's in there, right? In the one that's just below that, there's the Gallia. That has what they've already found trichloroethylene in it for sure. They've already confirmed TCE is in that one. And just below those 2 is the largest aquifer in the Midwest called the Taze River Valley Aquifer. It flows all the way up north west in Ohio, and it crosses over to Indiana into the Wabash River aquifers. So yeah, this stuff moves. It has had to move over decades. The contamination is absolutely saturated the ground, and there's no easy way to remedy this. There just simply isn't. They can pump and treat all they want. They're not going to remove it.
Where's the EPA? I mean,
they don't have jurisdiction. They don't have jurisdiction. That's the problem. We actually, me and Vina sent them a petition. There's nothing they can do because they don't have jurisdiction on site and they don't have jurisdiction off site. On site, the Department of Defense has jurisdiction. That is DOD property. That has been DOD classified ever since the 50s. So the only way we can get actual real information is through the DOD, not DOE. We can't get the information from Department of Energy. They've never had access to it. They don't have access to this information. If you think some Department of Energy big shot has security clearance to see these documents, I got another thing to tell you. They don't. And they're not adding this stuff into their studies. They simply aren't. They couldn't be. By law, they cannot be.
So now, years ago, the EPA came with me and went to the Cider River, and I watched them took pictures while they caught fish, and they took samples of those fish, and the fish were radioactive and chemically involved because we had hexavalent chromium that also went out to the Cider River, but they didn't do anything about it. I mean, I have the report. The fish were radioactive and they were chemically involved. This is back in the 90s, and still there's no signs in the creeks. At the last SSAB board meeting, I asked them, I said, would you please put signs in the creek? We have asked you since 92. So they came back and told me they can't do it because there's property owners on both sides of the creek. I said, well, put it in the middle of the creek. They don't own the creek. And he said, well, I'll have to take it back and ask. I mean, this is the kind of answers we get. One thing, they hire these community groups called Southern Ohio Incentive or Diversity or whatever they are. They give them grant money to find jobs for our community, and the only jobs they look for is for the DOE jobs. Matter of fact, our commissioner here in Portsmouth just got caught money laundering some of this money that was supposed to be went to the community for grants. And then we have Ohio University who pushes jobs for the plant and who's supposed to have a survey out for the community to see if we want small modular reactors, if we wanted a new gas power plant, and if we want the data center at Piketon. Well, no, we don't want any of that. We want them to address the victims, the cancer first, before they even talk about anything else. Clean up this site and declassify the records.
Well, that makes me want to ask maybe just one question. They built a nuclear waste dump basically in your backyard, didn't they?
Well,
Giving you all the security. This is going to be so safe. It's all right. Ain't going to be. Don't look here. There's no story. That's bullshit.
We fought that waste site. We had maybe 300 people, and they had it all the way down at Shawnee State, about 30 miles from the plant, 40, and thought they have it down there. Nobody showed up. Well, we had 300 people that showed up, and nobody wanted it except for this one little old lady from Sierra Club, they said. But she was actually with Steve Carter, who was with one of the community development people. But we didn't want it, and we thought we won it, and it was quiet down. And what they done, they went to our commissioners, to the surrounding area, and the commissioner okayed those 12 waste sites that they have out there, and they're decontaminating the buildings and putting them in these waste cells. Now, these waste cells, to me, reminds me of a big garbage can liner, and you just dump everything in it. But I know it's a little stronger than that. But they have problems with groundhogs. A groundhog can eat through those liners.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Now you've got that leaking into the soil.
See why this reeks of a government cover-up?
With Vina's work, was it Ferguson Group and the mayor and all that, they found that there was actually bedrock fractures underneath the site up to 90 feet. They advertised 70 feet, but me and Vina actually looked at the documents. They're up to 90 feet below that area underneath the disposal site. So there's definitely pathways for it to get to the aquifers, the main aquifer.
Through the years, all of the stories that's ever been broke has been through my documents. Other people are taking credit for them, but it was my documents. I found out that they were going to ship the Russian uranium here in 1992. I was in Washington, D.C. I belong to a group called Alliance for Nuclear Accountability. It's a national group that live around all of these facilities. And they gave me a book and told us that this Russian uranium was coming here. And this Russian uranium was also contaminated with all of these daughter products. I found out the bedrock was fractured. And a lot of these things I found out was through their own documents. The Midnight Rockets, Little Beaver Creek, the cancer evictions we took there, and the groundwater movement. We had Martin Resnikoff and Mary Bird Davis came here. And when they were here, I showed Mary Bird Davis that we had the plutonium records, and that's exactly what got the workers in the EEOICPA. So every major story that's been broke out here, press has done that. And then we formed another group called National Nuclear Workers for Justice. And that's when, in 99, we formed it to help get the compensation for the workers. And now we're working on RECA. We've been doing that for 4 years. We petitioned Senator Brown, and he was on it, and we got our names mentioned in the Senate. And then Brown lost his election. So now we're starting back at zero again. We work with the RECA group, the Radiation Compensation Act, and I've been working with them for 4 years, and we finally made the list. Next step is go to Congress. This compensation bill, and they're talking like $150,000 for community people who have cancer. And also the workers can come in and file on this also if they didn't get compensated to begin with. But if I was the workers, I would hold off until we get these classified documents, because they get a medical card. The community won't get a medical card. And Pike and Scioto County right now is on that list. And we never had one representative from the state of Ohio that showed up for the press conference. I talked with the representative, and Malloy, is that his name, Paul?
Moylan.
Moylan.
Moylan. James Moylan.
Yeah. And I talked with his staff during the RECA group. So we got on the list. And then they had
Yeah.
one reporter from up in Cleveland who came out with a story saying, well, we might make it. And then it sounded like we didn't make the list, but we are on that list. And I'm pushing that list, and we've been talking to our senators and representatives to try to get them to push them. I'm passing out flyers, and Press is a 501c3. After all these years, I've used my own money to fight that plant. And now I see I have to continue to fight it, and it's just overwhelming with the cost and the gas prices going back and forth to Piketon, because I live 11 air miles from the Piketon plant. And sometimes people say, well, you don't even live here. And I said, well, all of my family's buried over to the Indian Mound there at Mound and the Mound Cemetery. My great grandpa and all of his family lived there. And there's another thing they did when they started this plant. They moved a whole Adeno Indian burial ground off of Piketon site to put that Piketon site in there.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But very little people know, even knowing that that happened. If I hadn't read a thesis that a guy wrote, I wouldn't have even knew about that.
So, Vina, how can people help you with this cost? Do you have a GoFundMe? Do you have somewhere where we can donate money to help you? Listen, you're a true American hero.
Amen.
Thank you.
You are
Both are.
fighting the fight, the both of you, and your community should be very thankful they have warriors like you that are willing to stand up. You're standing up against the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
That's not an easy thing to stand up against.
And I started 10 years before Aaron Brockovich did.
Yep. And Vina, most people would cower and run away and shut their mouth, but not you. Not you. And I commend you for that.
I live in this community. People said, why don't you move? And I said, hey, wait a minute. I was here before that plant came. Why do I have to move? No, this is my hometown.
How do we help you?
My family and friends are all dying of cancer.
How do we help you financially? Do you have like some type of a place where people can go and they can donate to your cause?
Right now we have a post office box. It's Vina Colley, P.O. Box 136, Portsmouth, Ohio, 45662. And then we have a online email and Facebook, but hopefully we're going to get us a website put up. I had one years ago, but it got hacked so bad that I do better with Facebook. I have a Facebook, which is Vina Colley. And so I do really good with the Facebook. They hack me, but I can still get back on the next day. But with the website, they really went after me.
Yeah, the children must play.
Yeah, Vina, what you need to do.
We'll be working on something though digitally that people will be able to.
Very good.
To help.
Yeah, like a PayPal or some type of because not a lot of people use checks anymore.
I want to mention
everything's digital.
Right.
Everything's digital, Vina.
I want to mention too that we have 24,000 depleted uranium cylinders sitting out in the yard that give off neutron exposures, and we've had a breach one time at 100 pounds. But these cylinders are sitting out there. They're rusty. They're old. They were sitting on the ground, and we complained enough to where they put them up on like railroad ties now. And they also have a nickel plant that they contaminated that we wrote that story from Huntington, West Virginia. And they got it buried on plant site. And it's in an unlined pond since 1978.
There's a lot going on in your community. I can tell you that. We're coming to the end of the show. But I want to have you guys back on. If you guys are available one Saturday morning in August. I'm on vacation till the 8th, so I'd like to have you guys on live on my syndicated radio show. I'm not big on pre-recording things unless I have to, but if you guys are available, I would love to have you on that. Because we'll be on 23 radio stations all over. So I'd love to have you guys on again. So I'll be in touch with Larry, and maybe Larry can coordinate that with you guys. But we definitely need to get the message out. So, Paul, where can people find you, social media and so forth and so on? And
my name's Paul Mobley. You'll find me on Facebook. Under TikTok, you'll find me under Cobweb, COBBWEBB 3, Cobweb 3 on there. You'll find me on YouTube under Paul Mobley Science. You can find me on there, and I think that's pretty much all my socials. I don't do a whole lot of. I'm not on X or any of that other stuff. But
Yeah, it could be distracting.
that's mainly where I post my things.
Yeah.
so, Vina, where can people find you?
They can find me on my Facebook, Vina Colley. They can email me at vcollie888-838
Okay.
or they can call me
There you-
740.
Oh, don't give out your number.
She gives
Okay.
it out all day,
Go
every
ahead.
day.
Give
Give
it
it
out.
out.
Everybody has.
Give it out.
Everybody has my number.
Go ahead, give it out if you want to.
I help a lot of workers to go through the process to get their compensation because they don't know what to do. And it's
Yeah.
740-357-8916.
There you go.
And they have to leave.
And I do
they
have
to
an
leave me
email
a
real quick,
message
if I
because
can.
I get so
Go ahead.
many spam calls. I don't answer them all.
Okay,
Right.
go ahead.
So my email real quick is lowercase ICR risk. Actually no. SciSec SCISCE or SEC, sorry, SciSec at ICRrisk.org.
Okay, Larry.
Sure.
Text that information over to me. His email address. And
Yes.
I'm gonna post it in the description of the video. That way, if anybody needs to get a hold of Paul, they can. I'm gonna try to
Okay.
find your
Okay.
Facebook, Vina, and I'm gonna add that into the description of the video here too. And keep in touch. Like I said, if you guys have one of these Saturdays in August, any Saturday after the 8th, I'd love to have you guys on in the morning. I know it's early, it's 8 o'clock, but you know what? Your information, it needs to get out there. And because you're fighting a fight against, like I said, the military industrial complex. And you need as many people behind you that you can get behind you fighting this fight with you. And I'm all in. I'm in the fight now, Vina. Just because you're such a warrior, you inspired me.
Thank you. You do know that the centrifuge is running right now doing a high assay, low enriched uranium. And it's been in process since 2023, October 23. And this high assay, low enriched uranium, they're going to be using in these small modular reactors,
Oh, the ones for the data centers?
right? The ones for the data center.
Yes. And they currently have a contract with South Korea to sell HALEU fuel.
Yeah.
So it's not just here in our country. They're making money off of South Korea with it while they pollute our environment.
Disturbing. Very disturbing.
Very
folks.
disturbing.
Very disturbing. But you know what? We just can't let it stand. This is our country. It's for the people, by the people, not the military industrial complex. With that being said, God bless all you guys. Stay in touch. Larry, get me that information over, and
Sure.
let's shoot for some Saturday morning in August. And it's the same type of platform as this. The only difference is it's on the radio. and social media. So you even get a bigger reach. And I think it's important to share your message, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
God
you.
bless everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely anytime. Thank you, Larry. You're the man.
Peace. All right. So you can see the cause that I'm working for today. There. I keep forgetting to close the window and it goes to the next video, and that gets in my headset and I get confused. Well, I'm naturally confused. There, you know. But that's just me. So hang on. What? I'm coming.